Hello, everyone. Good to have y'all here for our LiveWell's deep dive, focusing on meditation and mindfulness. We're so excited to have you here this month as we have a very special guest who has done seasonal retreats with us this year. So you may have already met her, Dr. Sarita Cox, who is a lovely naturopath in town who has wealth of wisdom in her 20 plus years of experience in helping clients work through a number of issues. She has studied natural medicine at the university, I'm trying to get this right, National University of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon, where she had her professional medical training, and has been at her practice here, Alberta Orchard Wellness, for a number of years, serving the community and greater communities with all of her wisdom. And we have just been so delighted to have her alongside us in our retreats and all the wellness practices that we look to bring to our community. So we're just delighted to have her here with us tonight. And I am going to be asking you a variety of questions. You're going to be sharing a bit about yourself. So say hello to our audience and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. Erin, thank you so much for the opportunity to dive deep on these topics that are near and dear to our heart, and I know of interest in our community. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I want to make sure that I do not forget to mention this to anyone listening, that Dr. Cox has been doing a intensive exploration of meditation and mindfulness twice monthly here in person upstairs at Lifeline, Tuscaloosa location. So if you are interested in exploring, deepening your appreciation for your own meditation or mindfulness practices, those are every other Friday, typically, following our yoga class upstairs. So if you want a 2-for-1, it's been a nice tip for a lot of people to come to a yoga class and stay after and just have a whole morning of kind of immersing yourself in practices that can benefit your well-being. So look for those as well if you haven't attended some. Let's just jump right in. I know I just thought it might be good for our audience to hear from you about your own personal story in finding these practices that have led you to spread them with the world. So if you don't mind just beginning with that, I would love to share more about your story.
Sure. I'm just also going to try to get myself on the computer, so in case my phone goes down, we got a backup. Okay.
Okay.
So my experience with meditation, I believe it really started in naturopathic school. I was in Portland from 98 to 2003, where I was doing my naturopathic clinical work, as well as a program in Chinese medicine. And many of you guys may know I'm an acupuncturist in town. And part of that training, we did herbs, acupuncture, and Qigong. And so Qigong, some of us are familiar with, it's a body, a movement practice, like Tai Chi, but it's more medically oriented and it's mostly focused internal in the meridians. It's a healing practice for our internal organs. And we had several amazing masters that we studied with through that program. And with one of them, we did a lot of walking meditations. And so that was probably one of my first exposures. And then one of my teachers in Oregon, my homeopathic teacher, Dur Elmore, took me to my first meditation retreat in California. And I practiced story, but in 2003, I moved into that community, which was a community that practiced Kriya Yoga. There are many types of meditations. And so I practiced that in that style of meditation, which is a combination of sound and visualizations that's based in the yogic traditions. And it is a style of meditations where you're visualizing and listening and rendering sounds of the different chakras. And so you're basically moving up the spine with imaging and sound. And then there are different levels in which we're moving toward a heart-centered kind of ocean of nothing, everythingness. And so that I practiced that for probably about 3 years. And in addition to that, I was practicing yoga practices daily. And I did learn a lot of mindfulness and yogic practices that allowed me, and that those traditional senses, yoga is actually a body work that allows you to sit still. And so the asana practices are readying the body for stillness of the body and mind. And so I practiced that. It was really beneficial to me and my mind. And then I learned of another technique while I was in that community that I started in 2006. And that this technique called Vipassana meditation is the practice that I use now. It really resonated with me. And some of us have to do this. We have to find a practice that works for us. I would go back and I said my very first exposure was probably reading a book called Creative Visualization. And it's a very popular book. I read that in my 20s. And basically it was getting you to meditate through imaging your own images. And so this would be similar to a guided meditation where somebody is giving us imagery. And I do this at your retreats, Erin, where we take a spring retreat. We walk through the woods and we, have this meditation, or we'd go into the water. So these are more the creative visualizations that I would also consider a meditation practice that, I kind of discovered in my 20s that I've kind of come back full circle to. But those are kind of the creative visualization, the Kriya Yoga, and the Vipassana meditations are the ones that have stuck with me. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for sharing about, how you explored and landed and, sat with, and you even said, come back full circle around to some of the early practices that really kind of anchored you into this. So, and for explaining a bit about the yoga readying the body, because obviously, in providing all of those opportunities here for our community to explore, it's good for them to know how they link together for sure. So,
and we definitely see scientific research on that one. I think a couple of times ago when we're doing a mindfulness class, sometimes I'll bring in a piece of literature, and I consciously bumped it up to Ashley's Friday class because the studies are very strong that if we do a physical activity, particularly something like yoga, that's kind of a mind-body based activity, but even, more purely physical routines, we actually start to enter mindfulness states toward the end of those exercises. So I was very conscious in trying to find a good spot that would allow people that struggle with the idea of sitting meditation to be able to move their bodies in a way before they sit, and then having shorter sits so that people can experience a little discomfort. But what's happening in those situations when we're sitting together is the group field is holding us so we can sit longer.
Love that. Love how that was paired together. And so with that, maybe lead into just discussing some of the basics of meditation, just, what it is, how it works. I know you just mentioned bringing in some research. Yes, there is just so much information out there about the benefits. I often will tell people every interview I feel like I listen to, it's like if you interview the top of anybody with anything and ask what's one of their basic go-tos that has kept them, in their best space, then meditation is just always at the top of the list. Research and people just report the major benefits. So maybe if you could talk some about just what it is and how it works in that way, I'd love
Sure.
to hear.
So I take a broad view of meditation. I believe all cultures have meditative cultural practices. So, for example, coming from the South, a lot of people may be more familiar with the idea of be still and know.
Mm,
And in the Christian tradition, we see practices like centering prayer. And in the
mhm,
scriptures, we see that there was a meditation practice of, Christ had a meditation practice, really, if we want to just say that. It's true. What is be still and know? That's
mhm.
stilling the body so we know God, right?
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, when we speak of meditation, I believe it's a focusing of the mind. And I believe meditation, we can split it off into sitting meditations and movement meditations, but I believe that the sitting still meditations probably predate the activity meditations. I don't know that for sure. Walking labyrinth, for example, that's a movement meditation, or these walking qigongs, these are very powerful movement meditations, but what they have in common is that they are focusing the mind on an object or on no object, which is really, so I think that is the essence of a meditation practice, is we're focusing. For me, what I have found to be most true, that serves me the most, is a meditation practice that has three components. I find focusing with the breath.
Mhm,
That may be an assisted breath like we use in yoga, like pranayamas, like alternate nostril breathing to settle us. Or
mhm.
for beginners, if we are just focusing on our breath, we may need to breathe a little bit harder so we can feel that in the beginning.
Yeah.
But the two components that I find for my own personal meditative practice: breath, body awareness, and loving kindness. So I really have explored quite a lot of meditative practices. And I believe if they have those three components, breath, body, sensation, and awareness, and a loving kindness component, they're very wholesome.
Mm,
And they take you very far. That's not a
yeah.
requirement for meditation, but what I will say is the clinical popularization with John Kabat-Zinn really is Vipassana, and it's those three components. So Vipassana is a technique in which they say the Buddha became enlightened. And so it's following the breath, scanning the body, loving kindness. So that's another idea of meditation. There are many, many traditions of meditation.
Do you want to take a moment and just kind of walk through an introduction of what that would look like, for a 2-minute, 3-minute
Yeah.
guide?
Absolutely. So I'd like to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with an alternate nostril breathing, because I think for beginners, that is easier. And I don't do that. I just focus on the breath. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a minute and we're going to focus on the breath. We're going to use an alternate nostril breath. And then I'm going to lead us through that. And then we're going to scan the body. And a lot of people already in the wellness community there at Lifeline are familiar with the body scan. So many people use that practice or some version of that practice. So then we're basically just going to focus head to feet, feet to head on a body scan. And all we're going to do is notice the sensations piece by piece, part by part. And then finally, we're just going to come into our heart and do a loving kindness. And that can just be feeling gratitude in your heart, or it can be the more classic metta, where we find love for ourselves. We find love for someone that's easy to love. We then find love for somebody that's more difficult to love. And then we find love for our wider community. So it's those three components, and it's, personalize it as you like, but we'll take a minute and breathe, 2 minutes in scan, and then 2 minutes in loving kindness if y'all want to roll with that. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. So can you still see me? I just changed my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to have you do is take a hand. Can you see my hand?
Mhm.
Yep. And we're going to take the first two fingers and fold them down. And then we're going to use the thumb and the fourth finger to open and close the nostril. So we're going to turn the two down toward our face, and the thumb is going to close the right nostril, and then the left finger will come over and close the left nostril while it opens the right nostril. Okay, so we're going to start with, on the right side, we're going to breathe in. Pick your favorite number. I like 8. So let's breathe in 8. Close the nostril on the right and open the one on the left, and breathe out 8. Breathe in left. Switch. Breathe out right. Breathe in right. Switch. Breathe out left. Breathe in left. Switch. Breathe out right. One last time, bring in right. Breathe out left. Breathe in left. Breathe out right. Now just relax your hand. You might just want to make sure your body posture is upright, yet comfortable. And let's start at the top of the head. And we're going to scan the top of the head, the scalp, piece by piece, part by part, the forehead, the eyes, all the sense organ, the ears. Feel the nose and nostrils. Notice the texture of your lips. Notice some moisture on your skin, on your face, the back of the head, the neck. Allow yourself to move down the chest and the upper back. Notice any sensation on the upper arms. Notice any sensation or lack of sensation on the lower arms, the palms, the back of the hands. Let's return to the chest and the mid back, feeling the ribs, the rib cage, seeing what you can detect. Maybe on the surface, maybe in the internal organs, but just scanning on through, noticing any areas of pain or discomfort, scanning through the pelvis, the hips, the back of the thighs, the front of the thighs. Sometimes we'll feel free flow. Sometimes we'll feel blockage. Scan your knees all the way around them. The shins and the front of the legs, the calves and the back of the legs. Checking the ankles, stiffness, comfort, flow. Top of the feet, soles of the feet, toes, And if we're having a hard time, you can move those. It does move the mind to any movement, but sometimes we need to do that to become aware. And now on your own, I just want you to come back up the body at your own pace, piece by piece, part by part, scanning from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head. And if you find an area that you kind of get stuck on, just kind of mark it with your awareness and then move on to the next area. And once you reach the top of the head, just go ahead and sweep back down and revisit those areas. You're going to go all the way to the bottom of the feet at your own pace, piece by piece, part by part. And then we'll come back to the top of the head. Good. Now we're going to move into the heart space. So I want you to bring your concentration into your heart center. And one of the very best ways you can touch your chest to bring into awareness, you can also bring up a gratitude, something that you're grateful for. And this will bring you right into your heart space. So let's go into the heart and let's find a little love for ourselves. Love for ourselves for showing up for this, for showing up for whatever we have to do. So let's just find some love just for being today. And just feel that deep, deep sense of love, compassion, kindness towards self. Once we've tapped into that and we have self-love, invite your love to overflow your heart into someone that's easy to love. It could be a parent or a child or a beloved friend, somebody that makes you smile, that is easy just to fall into loving practices with. So just expand your heart to the other, to the beloved. And just feel that connection between self and other. Relish in that. Sink into that love, that connection. And now we'll just take it to the next level. We're going to think of somebody that we've had a difficulty with, or somebody that's a little challenging for us, maybe a cohort, maybe somebody we've had an argument with, difficult words with, a challenge with. And let's go ahead and extend that love to that person. Good. And that person is receiving your love. And now I want you to just move the love into the greater community. You can start in your own home, wherever you are right now. And from here, I just want you to extend it out your front door, your side door, your deck, maybe to your neighborhood. From your neighborhood, maybe a larger community. Maybe your county seat, your city center, maybe your state, maybe we the people, the United States, maybe North America. Maybe we'll travel, bring in the continents, all of them, the earth, and beyond. Fantastic. This is a practice of metta, or loving kindness.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
It really helps to uncomplicate, I think, when you can see the simple nature of a practice. I think part of what I see these deep dives is maybe, I don't know, demystifying or helping humanize just the practicality of a practice that we hear about, and maybe make it harder than it has to be. And, you know, really just walking through that with you, it helps one be able to see that I can do this. I can take these moments each day and kind of anchor into this breath and this awareness of my body and this connection to love and others, and just how could that help so many areas. I just realized I saw you in the waiting room. Are you on another device? So I need to let you in the waiting room on that device.
Yeah, I just thought in case this one was out, we would be able to have a backup.
I just knew it might do a little sound issue there to have them both on. So you may want to mute one.
Let me mute
the other.
You're good at this. Let me just mute this one. Thanks for
so that so yes, transitioning devices, meditating, transitioning devices. You can do it all.
So yes, it's beautiful to walk through. And, you know, we spent 5 or 6 minutes. And one of the things I believe as beginners, if we can just start with 10 minutes a day. And what I really encourage people to do is just tap that onto a habit that we already have, like waking up.
Yeah.
Wake up in the morning and allow yourself not to jump out of bed, but maybe spend that first 10 minutes in a reflective position. I generally like to get out of the bed and get on my pillow or my cushion. I find if I stay in the bed, I get really sleepy again, but sometimes that's fine. But I like to have a space that's holding the vibration and my intention. So even if it's just a little corner in the bedroom, that you've got a chair or a pillow, something that's very easy to kind of, and I often will go and make myself a cup of tea or a glass of water. And then I will sit on my, I'll sit. And then if we could do that, and we could also do 10 minutes in the evening. We're going to go to sleep, right? So if we could just take 10 minutes, and if it's not the meditation practice we went through today, it could be an app that we're using that's helping us go to sleep at night. It's still setting intention and it's still creating space. And I really believe it's about the habituation. It's about a habit. And what it requires is discipline. Sometimes it requires prioritizing it.
Yes. And I love, that takes me back to our very first deep dive on habits. I mean, the habit stacking that you just talked about, it's like there's certain things we already do. And so if we add that new thing to a thing that already exists, our likelihood of maintaining that habit or practice increases. So we know we are going to wake and sleep. We may not know much more in this lifetime, but we will wake, well, you know, assuming we'll wake up, we will wake up and we will go to sleep.
And
So
sometimes it's going to happen. We have to jump out of bed and bolt. And so I have an alternate slot. And I use it a lot in the summer because the heat is so intense that sometimes I'll wake up and I want to do my Hurricane Creek walk, or I want to get my gardening snap. And then I'll go ahead and do my activity, but I've got like 12 to 1. And then I'm like, if I didn't sit in the morning, I sit in that alternate spot. Because I know if I don't sit, I don't have the patience. I'm more critical, I'm more judgmental, I'm more reactive. And for me, if I don't do my meditation, I can tell. Like, we all want to know what the benefits are. But sometimes what we see is what happens when we don't do it. So if we get into a practice and then we fall off of the practice, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so tired, I'm procrastinating so much, I'm so irritable, I'm short with the person, I'm running the stories in my head all the time. Sometimes we see, after we've established how powerful it is, and then it's like meditate or medicate. I mean, that's been one of my personal things. Like, if I'm not meditating, I would have to medicate myself, but I choose to meditate.
I love that. And so when I was thinking about just when the meditation we practiced a few moments ago ended, and I was just thinking about all the benefits, the focus, the awareness, the presence, the connectedness, like all of the things that we long for and know have benefits to all of our mental well-being and total well-being are in those elements that are found just in the moments of that presence. And so I know when you just mentioned the whichever slot you can find, I did experiment this morning with even lying still in bed. I've been practicing with a balance app some. I try to let all my clients know that the balance app is a new app that's free to any Apple or Android cell phones. And so it's been free for a year. And so I've experimented with it some just to be able to have awareness of, its options and how to educate people to try it when they're beginners. But there's a 3-minute wake up. And so I just tried that this morning, which was, I think about when you hit snooze because you want to just lay there another 10 minutes. I'm like, what could we do in those 10 minutes that actually is helping us for our day? And so just listening to that wake up one and focusing on the breath and body awareness, almost like waking up from Savasana and yoga, where it's like, I'm going to wiggle my fingers and toes and orient myself to the wake up process. And it's like just taking those moments. And like you said, if you can't do it in the morning, you can do it at lunch. I tell people all the time, there's certain things we know we do. We go to the bathroom. You could stay in the bathroom for 2 minutes longer and stay seated. You could, there's a lot of ways to stack it on top of something that you're doing and to work it into various times of your day to be able to anchor you, as you said, so that you don't go adrift into some of those negative behaviors, but stay focused on those positives. So
I really love that. The other suggestion I'll make in my practice a lot is insomnia. So if people are really having a tough time sleeping, if they will allow themselves to go into any type of meditation, whether that be, a visualization, a recorded app, their own breath work, you will be more refreshed the next morning, whether or not you sleep, if you utilize that tossing and turning time to breathe and focus the mind. Go into the heart, whatever your choice is. You can just only heart meditation. You can do only breath meditation, but you will feel better, I guarantee you, instead of tossing and turning, if you use those moments for some type of meditation.
I go back to what you just said, the meditate or medicate. Yes, we often think about medicating to sleep, but that meditation, one that I use a lot is picturing, this might seem silly, but picture myself in this basket that's in the ocean that goes up and down on the waves, and breathing in as the waves up and down. And it's like just picturing that and anchoring my breath there, you know, often can drift me back to sleep. And like you said, and if you do stay awake, you're at least helping yourself regulate with your breathing and visualization to something that's calming the nervous system and helping restore.
Yeah.
So what else should we let our audience know about meditation?
One of the questions, you guys, thanks for contributing questions. That really helped us focus this to be of the greatest benefit we can to the community. And one of the things that came up was any tips for beginners. And we've kind of I've tried to integrate some of those, and we're talking around it. And we are talking about these 10 minutes or these 3 minutes or these 2 minutes, but I want to give you a radical suggestion.
Okay.
Ready, people?
Ready.
I really believe for beginners and for seasoned practitioners, an extended retreat is life-changing and practice building. So what I'm talking about is a retreat where you leave your home and you're under the guidance of someone, some teacher, and in a group. Because these experiences where you have somebody that's very seasoned in a practice and you have a group of people that are usually, you know, beginners or mixed with seasoned practitioners, you will get so far in building a practice. It will be an unforgettable experience. And what I will say is my favorite retreat is a worldwide retreat that's called Vipassana Retreats. And they have a website, it's dhamma.org, DHAMMA.org. This is a very unique group because you cannot pay to go to a retreat. You are literally invited to give a donation at the end if you want to. But the basis is no one's making money off this. No teachers are getting paid. It's all funded by the students that have benefited from the practices. And they only create centers where there's interest, and they're usually transient centers in the beginning. So when I came back from California, I joined a gypsy camp of practitioners in Florida, and they would go from place to place setting up Vipassana retreats. And then at some point, there was enough funding to create a retreat center outside of Savannah, Georgia, and Jessup. And again, it's all funded by students that have benefited, and you are living literally on the charity of others for 10 days. And during those 10 days, it's silent, it's co-ed, they are feeding you wholesome, simple vegetarian food. You are instructed 1 hour a day by a video and facilitated by teachers of this tradition that are not paid, that are volunteering their time. And the hall, you meditate 11 hours a day. And whether you're an active person or you're a couch potato, you're all going to have equal experiences of body sensations, right? It's going to be hard for you whether you're an active person or an inactive person, because we aren't used to sitting that much. But there is such a field of holding. And when you are able to wake up and meditate in a couple of hours, eat, meditate, take a shower, meditate, it changes your mind. So by day 5 or 6, and most people, they ask you to really consider it and whether or not you want to stay, and please try not to leave. Like you're committed to this. You don't have cell phones. You don't have any contact really with the outside world. They have a list of your emergency contacts, right? But we're cut off. We're in space. We're in meditative space. And then by day 5 or 6, the mind is going to want to quit. It's going to make up reasons for you to quit. But you're just on the brink of getting a moment of silence, maybe your first ever moment of a quiet mind. And so I know that's a radical concept, but it is 2 or 3 minutes a day, or it's 10 days in a row, or it's a weekend retreat, but I don't think they're enough. And we have to prioritize it. Nobody has 10 days to get a retreat, right? We have to say, I want less suffering in my life. I want better health. My personal story from that tradition was that through the process of my first 10-day retreat, I cleared 100% my cat allergies that I had had my entire life that were so severe. I could hardly even be in the room with a cat. But after that experience, I never had a cat allergy again, ever. And many stories of people, you can't go to cure an illness. You have to go of your own volition to not live a life of suffering anymore. You can't say, I have migraine headaches, I want to go to this retreat. But so many things that have somatized in our body from emotional or traumatic experiences can clear, given the fact that we're dedicating ourselves to choosing not to suffer anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, radical.
When you said, are you ready for something radical? That was more radical than I was thinking you were going to say. And yes, I mean, hearing of that healing properties of that kind of commitment, I know.
And it will set your practice. And they ask you when you leave to sit 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. And I did that for probably 15 years. And it really solidified my dedication. Not that I do sit regularly. I don't always make the 1 hour mark in the morning and 1 hour mark in the evening as much as I used to, but I always come back to it because I never feel as well without it. But I never would have known without that collective experience. And I had been living in a community doing meditation every single day for 3 years. So, you know, different things, but I would be neglect not to tell you that there are radical experiences out there that can change you to the core.
Yeah. I feel like I need about another hour to say everything that we would exchange about this, but it just made me think about, I don't know if you follow Jill Bolte Taylor. She talks about, she's a doctor who had a stroke, and she had a really awesome TED Talks, written books about her stroke experience. But she's talked about a lot in the trauma world and a lot of things that I listen to and follow. But she talks about the expansiveness and the oneness with the universe that came during that stroke, because basically her left brain went totally offline and her right brain was just left to have this creative process experience. And when you were talking, I was just like, yes, you had to, the 10 days creates the space of this openness and oneness with all that is, without all of the things in the way. You know, it's like when you said that day 5, day 6, what you let go of and surrender to, and that I imagine is you're letting go of all the attachments to all the things that you're thinking you have all these connections to be able to be open to have this other experience. And just how, yeah, I mean, when you said the word retreat, I was like, oh yeah, well, we could have a meditation retreat. But yes, I hear what you're saying, like 3 hours insufficient for the type of experience you're talking about, where you can totally get offline with all of the have tos and shoulds and obligations and all the things that block us from really being able to be still and know, as you said at the beginning. Yeah, so that was, yes, one of the questions was for a beginner. So yes, a beginner may be like, no way in the world can I commit to a 10-day thing at the moment. So is there another beginner tip for, like, we talked about the habit stacking with something you already do. And I know a lot of the apps that you might use will start out with the smallest first, like let's practice 3 minutes. So starting something small so that you can increase your comfort level with being able to do a larger time. I was talking with a client today who's been working on this about 6 months and was saying that now he can be at a 15-minute of silence and be comfortable. And, it takes time to build up to that. So
that's also radical. That's also a radical change. I'm going to share the one that I'm really, really, really fond of right now. And we had just talked in the background about the 4 agreements and reading that book and the simplicity of it. And I got a book out of my attic that I had not read in 20 years. And it's called I Am That. And it is a classic, a spiritual classic. And it was Jane Nagasari Maharaj, a Bombay merchant, like sold tobacco and became Metaguru 34, became realized by 37. And what I love is the simplicity of this book. It's a question answer transcript. His inclusiveness, supreme reality is the same as God, is the same as the Great Spirit. It's all the same consciousness. I know everyone doesn't agree with that, but that's my take. And that is the presentation in this method. His method is simple. It's about deconstructing. So the practice I've been using since I've been reading this book over the last 2 weeks, and it's so powerful. When we're in a meditation, we're often thinking about thoughts and trying to acquire this quiet mind or no mind. Well, let's be real. We're constantly having thoughts all the time. And the deconstruction method that's really working for me right now is to catch the thought and say, I am not my fantasy. I am not this action. I am not that relationship. So I'm literally, every time I'm having a thought, if it comes around several times, I'm like, I'm not that. I am not my job. I am not my car. I am not my nice leather couch. I am not that. I am not my garden. And it has been so liberating to catch my mind and say, I am not that. And so I think that's actually a super simple beginner, super advanced. It doesn't matter where you are. But I think if we could just, as a beginner, start noticing that we're having a thought, congratulate ourselves that we've noticed, because that's already separating from the thought, and then negating what we think we are.
I love that. And that really speaks to the question that often comes up that the audience, of course, asked about, if I have this anxious mind and these racing thoughts, and when I sit still, I'm flooded with that, which is a very common thing, especially for trauma experience. People who've experienced trauma is, I am not that. And I love that, being able to speak to the thoughts.
I am
and
not
by acknowledging them and speaking to them, hopefully beginning to quiet them to where they're not flagging to get your attention. It's like, because that's not what I am.
That's right. And also it will come in layers. At first, you're not the trauma, you're not the abuse, you're not the experience, you're not your past, right? So the more it'll keep coming around. And this is a very, very common experience for meditators. We try to have a practice and then we get very irritable and we have a lot of thoughts. Well, they're there all the time. We are just so, we are one with the thoughts. They are our personality. And when we start getting quiet, they actually start separating a little bit and we notice them. They were all there. They were in our body. They were in our cheeks. They were in our shoulders. And when we start to get quiet, they arise and they start separating because we are not them. And so the irritability, the impatience, this is what is locked inside us. And so we are somewhat liberating it just by choosing to sit, or other meditative practices like japa, using a mala and saying the same chant again and again, saying the rosary prayers. These are all meditations, and these are sometimes more helpful for people because they're an activity, right? So if you use your mala or your rosary and you say the same thing again, or whatever your prayers are, you're actually still in some type of movement. And so people that are really anxious when they're moving, sometimes it's good to settle with japa or counting the rosary.
Yes.
But we're just starting to separate our emotions and our thoughts, which are bound so tight, and we're so tightly identified with them that we don't recognize them separately until we start settling.
Yes. And so rather than being afraid of that, welcoming that and allowing that to come up so that you can begin to separate from that and not hold it all. So
congratulations, it's coming up. It's coming out for healing.
Yes, you can release that and not be that.
Recognizing that we're not that, right? Because
Mm.
it feels like we are, and we are trapping it, we are holding it in our bodies, we're protecting ourselves, we're doing the very best we can.
Well, and I think that's where the practice of, as you talked about loving kindness, bringing in that compassion can really be helpful. I know one of our tips for the week was the rain meditation that Tara Brock uses a lot. And that last part of it is that recognizing and allowing and investigating, but the nurturing what yourself through this process and providing whatever nurturing you need and compassion that you need to move through these things that come up, I think, can just be a way of giving yourself the love that you need through this process as well.
Yeah, Vipassana, they say at the end of it, the metta, it's like the balm, right? So like we're doing a deep surgery, right? So those days when you're sitting, you're really like a surgeon taking out all these deep defilements, all these difficult experiences. We're actually uprooting them, right? That's why we experience the chatter, and we experience sensation with those. We may feel really hot when we sit, or we might sweat, or we might shake. These are all things in the separation process because we're doing self-surgery, right? That's what's happening. And the loving kindness is the balm. It's like we did that, so now we got to put some healing salve on it, right?
Yes. Yes, you just made me think of the imagery of your garden and how if you've neglected it for a while and not sat with it to pull up the weeds, you go to it and it's full of all this stuff that's covering up all the flowers, and you start to pick it away, and it may take you time and you're flooded with it initially. And then after that initial pruning, you go back and maybe you see one thing here come up, one thing there, and you just maintain this, beautiful garden. Yes,
I love the garden analogy, and it's the whole composting, like we're going to give it back and the earth is going to recycle it for us, it's a great analogy, and it's a great practice. A lot of people feel meditative or feel so that's another thing that we can talk about is mindfulness practices, right? So what I would say about that, those are more of our activities where we're trying to maintain moment to moment awareness. And you will hear people say, oh, I run for meditation, or I do my meditation, I go fishing. I do my meditation, I golf. I do my meditation, I do gardening. And they're right, but I believe those are mindfulness practices because we do get absorbed, but we're in those states that we're not having a lot of external thoughts. We're actually weeding. We're actually washing dishes, like Thich Nhat Hanh has that great washing dishes meditation. Like he's a fantastic one for mindfulness practices, right? And that trains the brain to be present in the moment, right? So that's kind of how I look at mindfulness versus meditation. When we're engaged in activities and we're present in those, that's the moment by moment awareness that I consider mindfulness.
Yes, thank you for that, because mindfulness is often linked in there as people are talking about meditation. So it's good to have an understanding of what their differences are, and still all about presence and that
All of it,
awareness.
because that's all we are.
Yes. So, yes, let's take this last question before we allow our audience to have any questions. If you feel like we've sufficiently touched on the majority, I know one of these questions was, what are resources or tools? I will say we do have a good bit of meditations in our resource library. Of course, we'll have this in our LiveWell library. And there are, I mentioned Tara Brock earlier, lots of meditation teachers have their own websites where they have a lot. Gabby Bernstein has a lot of meditations in her website. You can take some of these meditation challenges. That can be a good entry point. Also, I mentioned Balance app, which is free for a year for any smartphone. Calm is what a lot of people use, or Headspace. Are there any others that you've heard of people using that they particularly are fond of?
I think you've done a really good job covering those. And for me personally, a lot of the meditation organizations, whatever that might be for you, TM or however you get there, like for Vipassana, there's a whole, I can listen to so many, I can join virtual groups, I can download programs. So, you know, finding your, what we call your Sangha or your group is also really important. And like Erin has done a great job putting resources together that are working for this community. And so talk to people. And people are always, new apps are always coming out, you know? So I think you've done a great job covering. Those are a lot of ones that I've used a lot. When I talked for Dr. Aldridge, we would use the Calm app a lot. And like the teachers just have audio recordings. So if you find somebody you like, people are so generous. There is one called freemindfulness.org, and they have a lot of, you know, MP3 kind of recordings that I suggest a lot of people go to.
Yes. And I mean, just searching, like Spotify is what I listen to, podcasts and music. I mean, just searching meditations on whatever search that you use for music or podcasts or anything, you'll find just a wealth of course, YouTube is loaded with lots of meditations as well. And again, a lot of those that are really nice, those sleep meditations in particular that may run for hours, that if you want to play that, you know, as you go to sleep, can guide you into a restful state. So lots of options out there and so easy to explore. And so I do think that it helps to have some discussion and understanding about it. So I certainly appreciate you sharing your expertise and ideas.
I will offer one more. I'm really fond of using YouTube to do frequency. So for sound meditations. So I will look up like 428, which is the Hertz for love. And I will run that, or for 888 for abundance or miracles. And so I use those. I will often even run it while I have to do computer work. Like I'll put that in the background and I'll do them for concentration. And so I use a lot of frequency. In fact, Albert Einstein said that the next medicine will be frequency medicine. And I do believe we're really moving, as we're moving into this age of Aquarius, I really believe we are really, really, so many more people are coming to me saying, I have a morning practice of listening to frequencies. And so please don't undervalue the accessibility and the powerfulness, and honestly, the capacity to use these frequencies frequently.
Yes. Well, How to Meet Yourself is the book that we're doing a book study this season. And she talked about this. And as much as I know about all nervous system stuff, I had not really explored it much. And so solfeggio, I think, was the name of the frequency language. And this 528 hertz was talked about a lot in it. And anyhow, so it's good to hear a little more about that from you as well,
And
and the power
it's
of
really
that.
just, you know, you got personally, it's about us exploring and find something that resonates with us, because everybody's not the same. So get out there, and my advice for beginners is also be playful. You know, we're gonna ask for it, you know, ask God, ask the universe to put it in your path, and things will
Yes.
open up for you.
Yes, thank you for that. Explore, creative, play, play with these new practices. They don't have to be hard. They can be creative and fun.
They can, and they are.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to your upcoming retreat and upcoming classes. So if anyone wants to drop in any of those, keep an eye out on the calendar for the meditation, mindfulness, and upcoming summer retreat in July. So thank you for being here, Dr.
Thank
Coates.
you for bringing me
Appreciate
into this community. I'm really
so much.
delighted. Leslie,
So
thanks for
much.
being here.
So I'm going to give us a pause and then see if our audience has any questions.